I'm going to get right into the reading. Spirit into matter. All the great metaphysical and religious works speak of the evolution of consciousness as a descent of spirit into matter. The great allegory of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden is an illustration. The temptation or the serpent, the eating from the tree of knowledge, the final fall which culminated in awareness of self speak only of the beginning of self-consciousness. This awareness of self as a thing of free choice was the beginning of man's conscious choosing of modes of action and methods of thought. It was the beginning of error, the start of evil, the beginning of sin and punishment, all natural results of man's search for truth. All natural results of man's search for truth. The great universal subconscious mind, acting upon itself according to the laws of its own nature, sets up centers of force which are conscious and which attract other similar centers of force to form matter. This matter, by the very nature of its overall consciousness, the sum total of the consciousness of all of its atoms, resolves itself into a particular form and seeks ever to know more about itself. As its consciousness grows, it becomes a living, expanding, feeding, and growing entity that we designate a living organism. As an organism, its consciousness expands with ever increasing rapidity, so that within a relatively short time, the expanded consciousness or spirit can no longer tolerate the limitations of its form and abandons it. Thus is established the cycle of birth and death, such as exists in all living organisms. The process of evolution is now in high gear. The amoeba, seeking to know itself, unites with other amoebas and becomes a jellyfish. The jellyfish further develops its perception and consciousness and becomes a fish. The fish further develops its consciousness and becomes a mammal. The mammal further develops its consciousness and becomes a man. All along the path of evolution lie the many residual forms marking the way for whatever consciousness reaches out to a higher level. There also consciousness remains behind. The very process of the conception and birth of growth of a human being through the polywog, the amoeba, the low-scale vertebrae, the fetus, and finally the human infant, which grows into the magnificent consciousness of a man, illustrates with remarkable detail the entire path of the evolution of consciousness. We didn't say something physical, we said the consciousness. Cosmic awareness in reference to the form. Thus, it can be seen that the purpose of life is the attainment of knowledge, the expansion of consciousness, a constant reaching upward and outward and inward toward a oneness with God. Browning wrote, "Such men are even now upon the earth, serene amid the half-formed creatures around. Who shall be saved by them and join with them?" In Palestine, nearly 2,000 years ago, a man looked at his neighbors and said, "Who hath seen me, have seen the Father." Adulterated and misconstrued, distorted and dogmatized, the magnificent consciousness of the man, Yahshua, also known as Jesus, also known as the begotten one, has been in the main but a confusing din on the ears of the deafened. I and my Father are one, 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 one. one with all men, all life, all things, all substance, the attainment of the consciousness of the whole, the attainment of the consciousness of God. Form is but the result of consciousness, and consciousness is but the result of thought, and thought is simply a contact and a borrowing from the universal intelligence that pervades all things. Thought makes form. Thought makes things. Thought makes form. Thought makes things. Thought makes form. Thought makes things. Expanding spirit changes form. In this life, whichever seeks to know more about itself, whichever seeks an expanded consciousness, he who would stop death would stay an infant forever. For as the spirit expands its consciousness, it seeks new form through which to express itself. The body which you now occupy is but an instrument of your consciousness, an expression of your knowledge of yourself. By the very nature of your being, your consciousness must grow, and as it does, your spirit will gradually lay down your body and return again into the universal subconscious mind, whence it starts anew in its quest for a new expression. This, of course, brings us to the subject of reincarnation. Reincarnation, reincarnation. Oh, we're going to get so scared. He's talking about reincarnation. When you have truly understood that there is only one life, only one mind, you will understand that this life incarnates into, or should I say, let me reread that again. You will understand that this life incarnates itself billions of times over in its search for completely knowing itself. When you have understood this, reincarnation will be as obvious as knowing yourself. For you will know that there can be no life without an incarnation of the one life which is in you, which is altogether you, one eternal and everlasting, that is, the truth about yourself, and the terror that death holds for many is simply vain regret at losing the built up errors and illusions of the conscious mind. One eternal and everlasting, that is truth about yourself, and the terror that death holds for many is simply vain regret at losing the built up errors and illusions of the conscious mind, which is the silliest and most illusory fear of all mankind. We shall cover a great deal more of this in the chapter on immortality. See, these videos ultimately are about two things. Oh, he blasphemies. He is speaking against what I know up to this point. There's only one reason for this video or videos. Immortality and wealth. Now, what is wealth? Wealth is knowledge that just builds upon itself, and there's certain ways how you can know the truth to love